football fans at a bar sequence with the colors and everything. And I think that's hinging on the success of, of an NFL franchise, which, of course, her husband's associated with because he practically built the new stadium. But I thought that was wrong. What you're doing is correct because you're looking, and you always say that, the pollster from Stefanik team. But first and foremost, going into what happened last night, I know you spoke with Mayor Jeff Graham on the Hotline show today. I spoke to your people about it as well. This conference, and I just want to give you a prelude to what encapsulize what I know about it. You walk in and they're doing a prayer basically saying that the country's in shambles and that there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. And you said something very, very pertinent today on the Hotline show. You said, wait a minute, we're under the leadership of President Donald Trump. Why are they basically claiming that the country's in shambles, Anthony?
I don't know. It caught me off guard. I walked in. I thought it was nice. They started with a prayer, but then the prayer, they said the country's spiraling out of control. Please, God, give us better leaders. We don't have good leadership. We need more honest people in politics and more good people in politics. Now, I think it's nice to say, please, God, give us more honest and good people in politics, but the country's spiraling out of control. President Trump's closed the border. He got inflation under control. He's doing all sorts of great things to make our country great again. I think everything's going in a very good direction in the United States of America. Look at all the fraud we just exposed in Minnesota, and we're finding out there's fraud all over the place, which is why taxpayer dollars are getting wasted. If Donald Trump didn't win, we didn't know that. We wouldn't know that. And we're going through an innovation revolution in this country right now, too. They're calling it the golden era. So I think the country's going in a great direction under President Trump. That really caught me off guard, and I don't know. I guess maybe the GOP chairwoman should explain why that was said to the media. I don't know if she'll take questions or answer that question, but I was really put off by that statement to start the meeting.
So is that the same woman who said this is a supposed primary?
Well, she had somebody else say that, so somebody else said that, and then she called it a supposed primary, and I didn't record when that was said because I was shocked. I wasn't planning for that to be said, so I don't have that recorded. But yeah, then I ended up recording her saying, I said, before she introduced me, I like to record what I say just to review it, and I get up and she goes, we're about to introduce Anthony Constantino, who's running in a supposed primary. I said, well, what does she mean by that? Yeah. I'm up by 27 points according to Politico. Yeah. A lot of big names in politics are contacting me, telling me I'm doing a great job running my campaign. It's my first time ever running a campaign, and people are really impressed with the way I'm running it. And I said that was a very rude thing to say. Right. And then she interrupted me, but if you listen to it, I handled it very well. I just laughed. She interrupted me. I just laughed, and I finished my speech. I think everybody enjoyed my speech. I had a good time giving it, and I had a good time there. Overall, I had fun. I think it was a great event because my opponent got up next and he spoke after me. They didn't let me take questions. He ended, they let him take questions, and the first thing he says is, I will take a question from anywhere, anybody, anywhere, anytime. So I said, well, if he says that, why don't I ask him a question? So I said, why do you lie so much? Because maybe people know this, maybe people don't. He's been lying like crazy about me. In fact, I'm going to be taking out a full-page ad in every newspaper documenting all his lies. All this guy does is lies. So I asked him that question, and then it turned out he was lying when he said he would take a question from anyone, anywhere, anytime. That was even a lie because he quickly changed. He said, well, I actually meant to say I will only take a question from the committee people. I was like, well, you just said anyone, anywhere, anytime. Right. And so I asked my question, and the chairwoman went crazy, banging the gavel. Luckily, I recorded it. And then I left, and I had a nice conversation with a gentleman in the hallway. He said, man, I dealt with all this crap, too, when I got involved in politics. And, he was very nice to me. And so we had a nice conversation. Meanwhile, the GOP chairwoman, you can hear it in the recording a little bit, not so well. She's screaming at the top of her lungs to the committee people saying, Anthony Constantino didn't even RSVP to this event. I said, well, first of all, you put my name down on the program. My team RSVP'd. Or she said, I RSVP'd only 4 days ago. What does it matter? I drove 4 hours to show up. Right. And talk to people, and then I had to drive 4 hours home. So I spent almost my entire day in the car to come talk to them. And, she was just very rude the entire time, both to me and I think to the president.
Oh, without question. But so they're basically saying that there is no primary, despite the fact that your name was listed. So I'm just going to go under the pretense that this was an event set up for Assemblyman Robert Smullen, and you happened to show up. And is that a good way of characterizing what happened last night, or how they approached it?
I've been going to all these committee meetings because I think it's a good opportunity for these committee people to get to know me. At the end of the day, I'm going to end up becoming their congressperson, and I want them to get to know me. And, they are inclined to like the guy they've known for a while for whatever reason. I don't understand the behavior because I think Mr. Smollen's behavior just crosses a line of unethical behavior. And even if you know a person and you like them, I say, if I have friends of mine that I like, you can maintain the friendship, but I don't give unethical friends important positions in life. I just say, hey, I'll be friends with you. No hard feelings. Maybe you did some things that are wrong in life, but I wouldn't put you in an important position. And Congress is a very, very important position, and Mr. Smollen's behavior just crosses a line. He lied like crazy. He lied saying, I don't pay my taxes, and I have unpaid taxes. I had no unpaid taxes. He smeared my company. My employees were so upset, you wouldn't believe it. They spent almost 2 weeks trying to find out if it was true what he said. It wasn't true. I paid all my taxes, and in fact, I overpaid by $8.3 million, which is the second largest overpayment in U.S. history.
Well, he did you a favor.
Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, I mean, are you going to get that money back as a result of him questioning whether or not you paid your taxes? It's almost a silver lining behind his erroneous comment. Or, accusation, I should say. I mean,
we're making it clear that he's a dishonest person. I think everybody's saying he's a dishonest person. The weirdest thing he said, he said a number one, they're just bizarrely odd. He said, I didn't support President Trump in 2016. He never endorsed Donald Trump, so he's trying to cover up for himself. Never endorsed Donald Trump, but he said, I didn't support him in 2016. I gave a $500 donation in 2016, and I was viciously boycotted for it. It's documented. And on top of that, I was in the New York Times at the inauguration. So I said, wow, that's funny. I didn't even know I was in the New York Times at the inauguration until he made up that lie. And then somebody contacted me and said, Anthony, you're in the New York Times at the inauguration, almost front row. I was almost front row next to Alex Jones. It was really funny. And then he said that it was just bizarre. He said, Anthony Constantino fled the country after Donald Trump won because he's a liberal that doesn't like the president. I was like, what is this guy talking about? I was at the 2016, it was in 2017, I was at the first inauguration of President Trump, almost front row, sitting next to Alex Jones, ironically. And in the second inauguration of President Trump, I was with Roger Stone. I was sitting having dinner with Roger Stone. I was in line behind Elon Musk. I was in the bathroom to take a leak behind all these billionaires that own all these companies. This is hysterical. I said, they have these porta potties set up.
Right.
And all the billionaires were in line to take a leak in the porta potty. It was the funniest thing in the world. I said, well, at the end of the day, we all go to the bathroom in the same place.
So you're almost like Clemenza from The Godfather there. I love that take a leak statement. So let me ask you, during the Hotline show, and this is very important, all of this is important. We're talking with Anthony Constantino. He's running on the Republican side for the New York 21. You said that Smollen doesn't have enough money. He had to go out and finance his own campaign, I believe $500,000. And at the end of the day, if hypothetically he did get to the general election, you feel that, needless to say, that's not enough to keep the seat, the 21st, in the Republicans on the Republican side. What say you about that, Anthony? And how little money he has going into this already during the primary season.
Well, I'm the third most well-funded Republican running for Congress, only behind Mike Jones and Steve Scalise, and I've funded myself with only one donor, myself. Robert Smollen started his campaign by lying and saying he raised $500,000 from donors when he really gave $500,000 to himself. He loaned it to himself because I believe he mortgaged his house or he did something to get the money, but he loaned it to himself. And the ironic thing is, before he went nuts saying, he held a whole press conference making up lies about me with the taxes and he had to retract and all this stuff. 3 days before that press conference, I was telling my team, I said, I feel bad for this guy. He's going to spend all his money to lose. I said, why don't we just call him and say, Bob, I got the poll from Elise Stefanik's pollster. You're not going to win. I want to show it to you. Why don't you just drop out? I don't want to hurt you. Why don't we do an event? And I congratulate you for fighting hard and being a decent person. And we just move on with life because I don't want you to waste all your money. I was actually talking to my team. I said, Anthony, are you really going to do this? I said, why not? Why don't I just call him? Worst he could say is no. He could reject the offer. But I said, why don't I just make the offer? And then next thing I know, he's making this bizarre press conference saying that I support Democrats because I sell stickers to Democrats.
Right.
Well, I don't want to live in a country where businesses are discriminating against customers based on political beliefs. That's just not a country I want to live in, and I don't think anyone should want to live in that country. But needless to say, I'm no longer going to make that offer to him. So if he spends all of his own money and he ends up with nothing at the end of this, that's his own problem because he just conducted himself so terribly.
Now, you mentioned 2016 several times, and I see a lot of comparisons here. The establishment, remember, back in 2016, the Republicans were banking on Jeb Bush to be the forerunner for be the representative for the Republican Party against Hillary Clinton. That obviously didn't happen. But during the debates and during all that entire process, a lot of the Republicans were basically looking at Donald Trump as a joke, as someone, as an outsider, despite the fact of being a very popular person, a billionaire himself from New York City. He had his own TV show. A lot of people know who he is. They didn't take him seriously. They basically looked at him as a pebble in their shoe. Do you feel like after last night especially that's what the Republican establishment looks at you like these days, Anthony, here in New York State?
Well, Jeb Bush was a little more interesting than the guy I'm running against, and Donald Trump beat him very easily. He just labeled him low energy. The problem with my opponent is he does so many things bad. You know, Donald Trump, he said Jeb is low energy, and it was just game over for Jeb. The problem with Robert Small is he does so many bad things. I've had to keep changing the label. First it was dishonest, and it just keeps changing. And it just keeps changing. His label just keeps changing. I think dishonest is probably the biggest and most important one. He just lies like crazy. But people that have been in politics forever, they don't like to see a new entrant jump in. And President Trump jumped in. He went straight to the presidency. So I'm sure there was some envy there.
Sure.
I'm jumping in out of nowhere and going straight to Congress. So
Right.
I think there's just a lot of envy, and that's what's happening here. I think it's just a problem with people that have been involved in politics for a while are envious of somebody that wasn't involved a year ago, and then they jump in and all of a sudden they're going to be in Congress, or in President Trump's case, they jump in and all of a sudden they're going to be president. But the reality is both President Trump and myself had great resumes before we got into politics. We built incredible companies. President Trump had a track record for doing great things in life, and I'm in the same situation, so I think it makes sense. That he ended up as president. I think it's going to make a lot of sense that I end up in Congress.
See, you started a company from nothing. You rebuilt old buildings in downtown Amsterdam that were just going to decay, or for that matter, fall apart before they would force the municipality to tear them down for tens of thousands of dollars. That obviously didn't happen. But going into this, sometimes, especially with the Republican primary on June 23rd, there's a lot of people that, older, middle-aged, it doesn't really matter. They might look at someone who is, and I'm going to use the word brazen, Anthony, with your comments, outspoken nature, certainly Trump-like, that's for sure. Do you think, though, at any given time, calling your opponent a liar, which is a strong word amongst men, and I've asked you this before, how do I put this, might not settle well with Republican voters on the primary going forward, Anthony?
Well, you were very generous. I think liar is an okay word because he is a liar. I call him slimeball too. He is a slimeball, but that's a lot more harsh than liar.
That is harsh,
I also call him Slime Bob, which is funny because it just makes people laugh. But the reality is this. Some people may not like that. Generally, the more pretentious insiders that say you can't talk that way. But I grew up on the factory floor. I also became a professional boxer, which is a working class sport, and I know the way the average person talks, and I like the average person. I love working in factories because when I went there, I worked in an office for a little while, and it was so uptight and stuffy. I said, I'd rather work in a factory or as a dishwasher. I worked as a dishwasher. It was my first job. I said, dishwashing is better than being in an office. I didn't like it. It was just so stuffy. So I know the way the working class person works, or the general person talks and thinks and whatever. Most people get a kick out of the way I talk. They think it's amusing, and I'm having fun getting to be my authentic self and just letting people see me for me. Maybe an exaggerated version of who I really am. In reality, I'm a lot nicer than the way I portray myself at times. But I'm having a lot of fun. I think the voters are having fun watching the race and watching me and the way I talk. And I want people to have fun in life. I think that's an important part of life.
You had a rally recently. Obviously, your local support within Amsterdam. I don't know how many people live in Amsterdam. I'm assuming it's bigger than Watertown, probably in the area of maybe 25, 40,000 people, whichever. Old Town, Kirk Douglas is from there. Many other people. Used to be an industrial town, just like most of upstate New York. You turned around a big part of it by putting your company there and employing hundreds of people right there in downtown Amsterdam, which is very, very commendable. But tell us about your rally you had recently. You had pictures on your Facebook page. A lot of people showing up. What type of energy do you see so far in your campaign amongst the people that support you, Anthony?
Well, that was an event for Sticker Mill. I'm still CEO of Sticker Mill. I have to grow my company. And so I had been doing this concept of giving back to customers. See, like, we give a lot of money to advertisers, and I said I'd rather give money to customers to promote us than to give it to advertisers, because it's better to give the money to regular people. So I said, this year we're going to give 5 to 10% of our advertising money to people. We're just going to hand it to them in the street to make viral videos. And I announced what we're going to do at an event. It was packed. We couldn't let anyone else in because we were at maximum capacity. But the cooler thing is, the first day doing this program where we go around, and I'm working with a guy named Greatness, who some people know, going around just giving people money. We gave money to a girl who was raising money for Girl Scouts. We were going to give her $100. And she goes, "Are you from Sticker Mule? I love Sticker Mule." And then her mom goes, "Oh my God, you're from Sticker Mule? We love Sticker Mule." And then the dad goes, "You're from Sticker Mule? You're Trump supporters." And the guy that was giving money, he said, "Yeah, that's true." And he said, "Give the money back." And the video went so crazy. Everybody in the world saw it, I think. It was seen by over 30 million people in 48 hours.
Wow.
So it was really cool. And I said, "This is funny." I said, "I got my opponent claiming that I'm not a Trump supporter, but I said, here it is, Dad."
Right.
And that was in North Carolina. I believe it was in Charlotte, North Carolina. I got this random dad in Charlotte, North Carolina, made his daughter, he grabbed $100 out of his daughter's hand, who was going to go to Girl Scouts, and he took it from her.
Wow.
I'm a Trump supporter, so.
Yeah. Wow. That was down in North Carolina. That's incredible. Anthony, again, we talk quite a bit. The election day, sadly, is in June. They moved that back from September. In the old days, I think Cuomo was responsible for that. We got to get people motivated, needless to say, for the primary, because, as a conservative talk show host, we can have a rubber stamp in a Democrat to take over a seat that has primarily been a Republican seat for many, many generations, minus a couple of years, about 15 years ago. But that said, that's paramount. Do people in at least the people that you speak to in the district, which is enormous, one of the biggest in the country, do they feel the same about preserving conservative, rather having a conservative as their congressperson going forward, Anthony?
The voters do, and by the way, I have Democrat voters that like me because people just want authentic people. So I'm going to win this seat easily because I think the voters, they want authentic, honest people in government. They know that by and large our politicians are dishonest people, and the voters want authentic, honest people in government. That's why they gave President Trump a landslide victory. They gave him a major victory in 2016, a landslide in 2024, and they did shenanigans in 2020 where people were filling in mail-in ballots that who knows what the hell happened there. But people want honest, authentic people in government, and obviously, I'm maybe too honest.
Yeah, that's a good way of listening, describing yourself, Anthony. Anthony Constantino, it's always a pleasure speaking to you because, just like in a scene in Scarface, when Mr. Sosa looks over at Tony Montana and he says, "There's no lying in you, Tony." Now, again, I just make the reference because I love the movie. I'm not suggesting that you're involved with any a bad activity and whatnot. But there is no lying in you, Anthony. So that's refreshing, rather, needless to say.
That's okay. I will say this really quickly. I'm going to get myself in trouble for being too honest right now, but I support all types of people, maybe because I run a factory environment. I said to somebody recently in a speech, I said, I have people with criminal records that work for me, and I treat them great as long as they come in and they do a good job. So I support all citizens, even the gangsters, ex-gangsters, ex-gangsters.
Sure.
So that reference is okay. I'm not.
Of course it's okay. Yeah, no.
I support everybody. And
yeah.
Maybe I should go watch that movie. I haven't watched it in quite a while.
Oh, it's a great movie, and it's a great scene in the garden and whatnot. Minus the helicopter scene. It's pretty brutal. Anthony Constantino, thanks for being with us here today on the Live at 5 show. We hope to hear from you soon and eventually get you back in the studio physically when possible.
Right. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
Excellent. That's Anthony Constantino running for Congress at this point within the primary stage, which, as Jeff noted, the petitions are going on, I believe, in the next couple of weeks. But when you listen to the people, or at least the person running the forum up in Canton, in St. Lawrence County last night, essentially they're looking at it like there's only one man running, which is very odd. Anyway, I got to do a commercial, and we'll be back right after these messages.
The Democrats want to push President Trump out of office. So how do they do it? By taking over Congress in the midterms. They're targeting dozens of districts, including our New York 21. So the question is, are you ready? Anthony Constantino is. Anthony Constantino isn't an Albany politician. He's a successful businessman. The CEO of Sticker Mule, a wildly successful company headquartered right here in Amsterdam, New York. He's built real businesses, created real jobs, and he knows what it takes to grow an economy from the ground up. Anthony Constantino is a proven outsider with grassroots Republican values and the backbone to stand with President Trump. Now he's running as the Republican nominee for New York's 21st Congressional District, fighting for economic growth, strong national security, and practical leadership that actually works. The Democrats want Trump out. We need Anthony Constantino in.
I'm Anthony Constantino, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Constantino for Congress.
For 35 years.